Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson, here on this very sad, very gloomy, very depressing Tuesday afternoon. If you guys are a fan of any New York team, then you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, the Giants lost, the Yankees lost, the Knicks also lost. It's just not a good day. Not a good day to wake up as a fan of New York. I do have to say that it was really, really disappointing. I'm really sad. I'm distraught. I'm feeling feelings that I normally feel like every other week, but this time it's just extra sad. I don't know how much longer I can do this as a Giants fan. But that's not why you guys are here on the podcast. You guys want to hear about basketball, and we've got plenty of that in store for this podcast and for these segments. So, in the first segment, we are going to talk about Dwyane Wade finally getting a statue. We're going to see the statue. We're going to talk about D. Wade and his accomplishments throughout his career. And I'll probably ask for your guys and your opinions in the comments on what you guys think of Dwyane Wade. And then in the second segment, we are going to talk about Rudy Gay. He recently just announced his retirement. And I'll go ahead and I'll talk about that in the second segment. And then in the third segment, if worse comes to worse, well, not in worse comes to worse, but in the third segment, we're going to talk about the Lakers' loss and to Phoenix, and we're going to focus on that game. And then in the fourth segment, we are going to do a quick recap of all of the NBA games that happened yesterday. But yeah, it really wasn't a good day for me in sports yesterday. Every single one of the teams that I tend to root for and I tend to go for ended up losing in practically every sport. I switched the channel for some of them. Oh, the Yankees lose. I switched the channel over to New York. Oh, the Giants lose. Oh, I switched the channel over to the Lakers. And then the Lakers lose. It's just... and LeBron loses. It's just a bad day for sports. So, at least for me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. But we also have a special fifth segment that's lined up for after the fourth segment. So, be sure to stay tuned for that if you guys are interested. And before I start with the show, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've just been dying to share. We're all ears, and if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. You just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show. They make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And if Super Chat's not really your thing, then that's okay. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way as well. They really help the show. They make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And let's go right ahead and get into this first segment. So, Dwyane Wade, we all know him, we all love him. Miami Heat shooting guard, probably the best player in the Heat's franchise. I mean, to most people, personally, I think the best player was LeBron for their franchise, but that is a completely different argument. The fact that Dwyane Wade has multiple years as Miami Heat under his belt probably give him the edge in terms of talking about who is the greatest Miami Heat to ever play and who's the greatest Miami Heat in their franchise. And deservingly so, Dwyane Wade ended up getting a statue outside of the of Miami Heat's basketball stadium. And I mean, I'll let you guys be the judge of this statue. So, boo. I mean, good Lord, what is that? I mean, what is that? That is not Dwyane Wade. That is Wade Dwyane right there. That is... I'm sorry. It's so funny just looking at how this statue looks. Here's another picture of how the statue looks. And I mean, that doesn't look like Dwyane Wade at all. I'm sure you guys can agree that this guy right here is not who this is right here. It does not look like Dwyane Wade at all. And I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you guys think the statue's funny? Do you guys think that the statue looks like Dwyane Wade? I personally don't. Or do you think it doesn't matter how the statue looks, and what really matters is well, not really the memory, but the fact that his legacy and the legend of Dwyane Wade is going to live on forever in the Miami Heat's franchise with the statue that he has. And I mean, while it is kind of funny to look at, I will say that Dwyane Wade is one of the former athletes that is by far most deserving of a statue. You could see on the back right there some of the accomplishments that he's gotten as an NBA player for the Miami Heat. 3-time champion. He was on the NBA 75th anniversary team, which ranks, the top 75 players in basketball history. He was also the 2006 Finals MVP, 13-time All-Star, and second 2-time All-NBA first team, 3-time All-NBA second team. And I mean, aside from Kobe Bryant, because they both played at around the same era, he was arguably the best shooting guard in basketball from a point in time. Despite this, however, the only real bugaboo on his resume is the fact that he does not have an MVP. And really, when you look at the rest of his accomplishments and his accolades, I don't really think it's that big of a deal that he doesn't have an MVP. Because again, you have to remember, this guy played in the same era as prime LeBron James. He played in the same era as a prime Kobe Bryant. And those two players are essentially, you could argue that they are, similar in his play style and similar in his position. And they do their job a lot better. So not being an MVP and getting snubbed, for lack of a better term, to those two players is not really that big of a deal and is not the end all be all. Not to mention, I mean, he has a Finals MVP. So if he doesn't have, which is something that you could argue is even more difficult to win as opposed to a regular season MVP. Again, it's just an argument. I haven't really, if you want me to do a section on that, which in my opinion, I think is the most difficult to achieve and which is the most difficult to get, then let me know in the comments. But as of right now, the Finals MVP, you could make an argument that it is a little more difficult to win that as opposed to winning a regular season MVP. Now, Dwyane Wade, despite this statue, not looking like him in the slightest whatsoever, he didn't really seem to care about that. He loved the statue, and he obviously, the statue of yourself, it doesn't matter how you look or how the statue looks. What matters is that you know that your legacy is going to live on in the fans of the Miami Heat. And I mean, I don't think there's going to be any Miami Heat fan who isn't going to know who Dwyane Wade is and what he's done for the team. And this statue essentially ensures that, so that way the future generation of basketball can remember and honor his legacy and all that he's done for the franchise. So they unveiled the statue on October 27th, so it was a few days ago, over the weekend. I didn't cover it yesterday, mainly because there was so much basketball going on and so much news going on about the regular season that I felt like I could sort of hold off on this segment until now, and which I did. And Wade was also, there was obviously a press conference after Wade got his statue. People quickly asked questions, and one of the questions that was asked to him was what current players in the NBA now are most deserving of a statue. And Dwyane Wade answered LeBron James, along with Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant. Now, LeBron James, he should probably have a statue for 3 franchises. I mean, he should have one in Cleveland, without a doubt. He should have one in Miami, without a doubt. And he should also have one in LA. Now, you can make the argument for whether or not he should have one in LA, but I think he should. And you can make, regardless what you think of that bubble championship and the Finals MVP that he won, I still think that LeBron deserves the statue in, if not LA, at least the 2 other franchises that I've mentioned, by winning multiple MVPs for Cleveland as well as Miami, as well as winning championships. Just one championship for Cleveland, but multiple championships for Miami. Now, Stephen Curry, obviously for the Golden State Warriors, he should have a statue, no question about that. The best shooter in the history of the NBA, the best shooter that anyone has ever seen, without a doubt should get a statue. But Kevin Durant, no idea where exactly Kevin Durant would get a statue. He definitely deserves one, but I have no idea where they would put that. I mean, I don't think OKC is going to give Kevin Durant a statue, considering what he did with OKC, blowing a 3-1 lead, and then after blowing that 3-1 lead, leaving for the team that ended up beating him, which was the Golden State Warriors. And I mean, his time with the Golden State Warriors, it was rather short-lived, but he still was able to cap off back-to-back championships as well as back-to-back finals MVPs. Now, again, you can make the argument that matchup was unfair. In fact, I think that Golden State matchup against Cleveland was incredibly unfair, but alas, I mean, history is history, and there's no way to really take away those championships that he ended up winning. So I think that the Golden State Warriors, I think that would be the franchise that ends up making a statue for him, because he can't get one for Brooklyn, and sure as heck can't get one for Phoenix if he doesn't do anything for Phoenix. And I don't think just what he did with OKC and, just backstabbing them with the decision to join Golden State, I don't think OKC is going to be willing to give him a statue either. They might be more willing to give Russell Westbrook a statue outside of OKC than they would give Kevin Durant a statue. So, I mean, let me know in the comments what you guys think. If Kevin Durant were to get a statue, which franchise do you think should make it for him? Golden State, OKC, or maybe some other team that he's played for. But those right there, I feel like, are the two big franchises. And I mean, it's not like I think Kevin Durant doesn't deserve a statue, because he is one of the best scorers that the league has ever seen. However, it's really like which franchise should give him the statue that's really in question. And I think the most logical one would be the Golden State Warriors, given, what he did with OKC. But let me know in the comments what you guys think. Maybe you guys think that maybe any of you OKC fans out there don't really think about that decision anymore in hindsight, and given what is going on, and maybe you forgive him or something like that. I don't know. I personally, if I was a Thunder fan, I would never forgive him. In fact, as a LeBron fan, I still don't forgive him, because the way I see it, that move essentially robbed LeBron of winning two championships, like 2 other championships and 2 other finals MVPs. Again, I can do a whole segment on that if you guys would want. But clear cut, LeBron and Steph, without a doubt, deserve to get statues for their respective franchises. And you can make the argument that LeBron deserves a statue for 2. But that's really that's really all that I had to say in this segment. Again, let me know in the comments what you guys think of the ridiculous looking statue, or whether maybe you guys don't really care about how the statue looks. Let me know. So that's all that I have for the first segment. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the second segment, where I talk about Rudy Gay announcing his retirement, and just talk about his career a little bit, why I'm talking about his retirement and things like that. And I'll be right back after the short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in the second segment, we're going to talk about Rudy Gay announcing his retirement. And before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody that we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show. Whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've just been dying to share, we are all the ears. And if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. Just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show. If Super Chat isn't really your thing, that's totally fine. You could always use the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. It is gsmcpodcast.net, and you could send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show if Super Chat's not really your thing. So let's go ahead and get into this next segment, which is talking about Rudy Gay announcing his retirement. And he has played 17 seasons and had stints with 5 different teams in the NBA. And he announced his retirement in an article of the Players Tribune, writing how he feels like the luckiest man in the world for all that he was able to accomplish on the court. So I'm going to go ahead and look at this article that he wrote, and I'm going to read it. So he wrote, when you make an announcement like this one, you can't keep it a secret from literally everyone. It's impossible. You're going to have your people you tell early, whether it's your dad, your wife, your best buddies from grade school. There's always going to be people who know you're retiring before the world does, and those people, they love you. They know that turning the page is probably pretty scary, so they kind of check in on you. It's like, oh wow, congrats, big decision, are you okay? That makes you pause and take a stock on everything you know. It makes you think about where you came from and everyone you've learned lessons from over the years. The special moments, the friendships, everything comes to the mind in a flash. But with me, something else would happen too. Every time someone asked me, are you okay, after I told them the news, my mind would immediately go to a very specific place. Back to one of my all-time NBA moments, me and Kobe Bryant going at each other inside Staples Center back in 2013. Kobe's one of the main guys I learned for advice after I tore my Achilles in 2017. He helped me so much back then, and I'm forever grateful. But 4 years before that, Kobe and I were fresh off the USA basketball camp out in Vegas. During those camps, guys spend a ton of time together, so you form some close bonds. And this game in LA was one of the first times that we played against each other after Vegas. Before tip-off, we see each other, and it's all love. It's like, what's up, Kobe? What's up, Rudy? Super chill. And then the game starts, and at one point, Kobe, he decides to switch on to me in the post. I was a lot taller than him, but he's Kobe Bryant. He doesn't care. So he comes at me like it's nothing. I start backing him down, and he tries to stand me up. Of course, I'm like, come on, bro. And I go right at him, like all out. And as I do that, he reaches around, and well, I kind of slam my shoulder right into his head. Bam. And Kobe goes down hard. When he gets up, I look at him and notice dude's bleeding a little bit. We're boys, and now I have him out here on this court bleeding. Yo, Kobe, I say, Kobe, are you okay? And he says nothing. I mean, if you guys know anything about Kobe Bryant, I mean, he barely says anything in the game. He is just super stupidly locked in. It's unbelievable. And he continues writing, doesn't react at all. Maybe he didn't hear me. Or did I F up his eardrum or something when I hit him? Can Kobe not hear now? What did I do? So play continues, but at the other end, someone knocks the ball out of bounds and there's stoppage. Or something in their stoppage. I walk over to Kobe like, Kobe, you all right? Nothing. He's just swaying back and forth now. It's crazy, just swaying in place. His eyes looking off in the distance somewhere. Next possession, we're on the offense again, and there's a foul. Okay, enough. I'm standing right next to him at the foul line, like, I gotta see if Kobe can hear. Kobe, are you okay, man? A second passes, then another. Then he turns his head in my direction and looks at me, blank stare. Kobe, I know I got you with the shoulder a little bit. Are you okay? A few more seconds pass, like awkward seconds. Then he looks straight into my soul with those eyes of his, and real slow and pronounced, he says, don't you ever ask me, am I okay? It was the coldest, cold-blooded thing ever. And then he didn't say another word. We just went back to the game. It was the middle of the third quarter or so. And as you probably guessed, Kobe roasted us after that. Dude scored 24 points after it happened. He hit 3 threes in the final 2 minutes of the game to send it to overtime. And then in OT, of course, the Lakers got the win. An hour later, he's on Sports Center or whatever, and they're asking him about all those points he scored at the end. And he's literally like, yeah, I mean, Rudy Gay asked me if I was okay. So, no joke, dead serious. That's what he says on TV. Then he smiles this sly little smile. I'm just shaking my head watching that like, you know what? In retrospect, maybe I shouldn't have asked him if he was okay. Lesson learned. Kobe taught me all about focus that day, about how even though they call it a game, hoops isn't really a game. You're trying to be the best player in the world. And you know what? Sitting here now, knowing that my NBA days are over, I'm absolutely convinced that the coolest thing about putting up 18 years in the league is all those moments like that one with Kobe Bryant. I've been beyond fortunate to experience so much in the game, and so on my way out, I really just want to tell a few of my favorite stories and shout out some folks who have been especially meaningful to me. And he continues going on with the story. And honestly, if I were to keep reading all of this, we would be here forever, because Rudy Gay, again, 17 seasons in the NBA, 18 seasons. I mean, he had a very long career, and I guarantee that he has a lot of stories with that as well. And his last appearance in an NBA game was for the Utah Jazz on March 2022 in in March 22nd on 2023. And he first put himself on the national radar during his 2 seasons at Connecticut for 2004 and 2006. He was named Big East Rookie of the Year as a freshman and earned a first-team All-American honors during his sophomore campaign. In fact, while Rudy Gay in the NBA might not have been like, your star caliber player like most stars that you guys are familiar with, he is that one guy that almost every basketball fan knows. Like, there's something about him that is just like that everyone immediately knows who you're talking about, and everyone's like, yeah, he's cold, like he's really good. Even though he might not be a star, or he might not have been a star in his time in the NBA, people know who he is and people recognize who he is. It's one of those like it's one of those role players that everyone knows and is like is fond of their game. Similar to like Jamal Crawford, how, we remember when in his time with, the Knicks, he was a starter, then later on he became a Clipper and was the sixth man. But despite being a sixth man, a lot of people still know how cold Jamal Crawford actually is. And he's one of those players like that, if that puts it into any sort of perspective. And he, as you guys know, he played for UConn, and his title hopes in the 2005-2006 season were dashed during George Mason's Cinderella run in the NCAA tournament. Gay did everything in his power to get the Huskies into the Final Four with 20 points and 6 rebounds in 42 minutes, but Connecticut fell 86-84 in that overtime game. So then he declared for the draft in 2006 and was selected number 8 overall by the Houston Rockets, who traded his rights over to the Memphis Grizzlies, and he spent the first 7 seasons of his career with Memphis. In the 2010 to 2011 season, the Grizzlies won their first playoff series in franchise history, defeating the 61-win San Antonio Spurs in 6 games. Then Memphis traded Gay all the way over to Toronto midway through the 2012-2013 season, where he was traded again early in the 2013-2014 season to the Kings, who he would play with for the next 4 years. Then he missed most of the 2016-2017 season and the start of the 2017-2018 season due to a torn Achilles. He had a 4-year run with the Spurs from 2017 to 18 to all the way to 2020 and 2021, then closed out his career with the Jazz for 2 seasons. Golden State signed Gay to a 1-year deal in September 2023. He averaged 2 points per game on 33% shooting from the 3-point line. in 2 appearances before being waived as part of their final preseason roster cuts. In total for his career, Rudy Gay appeared in 1,139 games between the regular season and the playoffs. He averaged 15.8 points per game, 45% shooting, 5 rebounds, and 1.1 steals per game as well. And that's really that sums up essentially the career of Rudy Gay and his time in the NBA. And we're really starting to reach that era of basketball where a lot of the old players and a lot of the players that I grew up watching are starting to retire. And it's a really sad day, but there's also some good news that happens with all of these old folks retiring. It means that we get younger players that could end up being even better than some of these older players that have played a long career in the NBA. And that's something that I'm really, really excited. That's something that I'm really excited for. While there is no more LeBron, there is Luka Doncic, who I could argue is one of the closest players to LeBron. Not the closest. I actually think Giannis, if there was anyone close to LeBron, Giannis would be the one closest to LeBron. He has the offense, he has the defense, he has the facilitating, and he has the incredible finishing around the basket, just like LeBron James. Doesn't really have a shot, though, but aside from that, he still gets his production. And really, it's, the fact that LeBron's career, honestly, since we are on the topic of LeBron, the fact that LeBron is still playing and Rudy Gay ended up retiring and Rudy Gay was drafted after LeBron was drafted is kind of insane. And speaking of LeBron, we might as well go ahead and go into our break and go into the third segment where we talk about the Lakers game and between the Phoenix Suns. The Lakers ended up losing, so I will go ahead and talk about that right after this short break, so be sure to stay tuned.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about the Lakers game between the Suns and how this is the first loss in the Lakers season so far. And, I'm just going to go ahead and focus on this game, specifically, and then I'll go into the rest of the games in the fourth segment. So, I picked the Lakers to win this game, but that it was a close game. It was a game that ended up coming down to the wire, but of course, the Lakers ended up losing 109 to 105 to the Phoenix Suns. Now, you might think okay, this is just, Phoenix ended up making the adjustments that they needed in order to stop the Lakers. And I'm considering how they recently played the Lakers over on Saturday, I believe it was, then, it makes sense that the Suns, they ended up capitalizing on this. Actually, no, excuse me, they ended up playing Friday. I apologize for that. So it makes sense that the Suns ended up capitalizing on this second chance to play the Lakers and, possibly made some adjustments. But really, the big reason why I think they ended up losing was because of LeBron James. And You know, it's a rare thing it's a rare sight to see where LeBron is actually the reason why his team ends up losing the game. But LeBron ended the game with 11 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds. Now, I mean, as a 40-year-old, this is a very good performance. You know, he's 39, almost turning 40. But seeing as this is LeBron, this is not a LeBron performance that we expect, regardless of his age. He also shot 3 for 14 from the field, which is very bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I know I'm a LeBron fan, but I'm also not delusional enough to realize that not realize that he played bad, because he did. And this loss was on him, and there was really no other player to sort of blame for this loss aside from LeBron James. And, I mean, going 3 for 14 is less than ideal. And there was at one point where it seemed like LeBron's double-digit scoring streak of 1,000-plus games of scoring double digits was going to come to an end right there, up until the fourth quarter where he drained a very, very important three to make the score close within one. And then, unfortunately, later on in that game, Austin Reeves ended up missing the three-pointer that most likely would have tied the game and put the Lakers in a better position to ultimately win the game. But aside from that, this game was primarily LeBron's fault. And he was missing a lot of easy shots that we usually see him make. And is this the start of a decline for LeBron? Like, are we finally starting to see LeBron decline? I'm not entirely sure, but so far he's only had, like, I actually, you know what, let me rephrase that. The first 2 games that he had were rather underwhelming considering LeBron's standards, but he still ended up winning. So it's not that big of a deal in hindsight. And then in the third game, he put up a ridiculous 30-point triple-double, which shows that he still has a lot of basketball skills left in the tank, but then he puts up this stinker of a performance, 3 for 14. But bad games, they happen. Like, they happen to everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, they happen to absolutely everyone. And I think this was just a bad game for LeBron. I don't expect a huge decline coming in from him in this season, given, you know, how I expected a decline to come in from him maybe like 6-7 years ago, and that still didn't happen. So I think it's a little bit too early to tell that LeBron is on the decline, especially considering how the Lakers have started 3-1. You can make an argument that a big reason why they started 3-1 was primarily because of Anthony Davis, as well as the other performances coming in from the rest of the Lakers and their players. But really, this game, it was really LeBron's fault. Now, one thing that also did not help the Lakers in this game was the scoring in the second quarter and the scoring in the fourth quarter. Now, to start the game, the Lakers were up 34-25 against Phoenix, and then in the second quarter, they only put up 14 points compared to Phoenix's 25. So, Phoenix, they were able to remain consistent throughout most of the game, while the Lakers, they sort of slowed down towards the end of each and every single one of those halves. And that was really the big problem with the Lakers, aside from LeBron not really playing that well. Austin Reeves, despite the fact that he missed the potential game-tying three, ended up having 23 points, 8 for 15 from the field, and 5 of 9 from 3, also recording 8 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals along with that. Anthony Davis, again, another MVP-type performance coming in from him, 29 points, 15 rebounds, 3 assists, along with 3 blocks as well. D'Angelo Russell didn't really play that impressive, 14 points, 8 assists. He shot 5 of 13 from the field. Roy Hachimura played pretty well in this matchup, 20 points, 10 rebounds, and shooting 8 for 18 from the field. But again, this loss was it was LeBron's fault. I mean, if LeBron would have hit just a couple more shots, like even if he would have went like 6 for 16 as opposed to not 6 for 16, 6 for 14 as opposed to 3 for 14, then the Lakers would have ended up winning this game. But alas, that did not happen. It also didn't help that Devin Booker and Kevin Durant were both on something this game. They both scored 30-plus points. Kevin Durant ended with 30 points, 11 for 20 from the field, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, along with 4 blocks as well. Devin Booker also played phenomenally in this game, 33 points, 11 for 23 from the field, 3 of 8 from 3, 2 assists, 3 rebounds. Bradley Beal played okay, 15 points, 6 of 14 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3, along with 3 rebounds and 4 assists with that as well. It was all right, just solid, not entirely, the best caliber performance that you could expect coming in from Bradley Beal. I mean, you'd expect him to have at least 20, so maybe you can argue that the Phoenix Suns should have won by a little bit more. But again, this is mainly LeBron's blunder in this matchup, and obviously, I expect Kevin Durant and Devin Booker to have a really good shooting night almost every single night in the regular season. I don't expect them to drop 30 points in every single game, but I do expect them to drop 30 in a lot of the games that they play together. And, I mean, we'll see just how the Suns can improve from last season. I don't really see a dramatic jump in improvement with this Suns team because considering how they only are relying on 3 players to run their offense, I don't think that's something that can be withstand long term, especially in the postseason. Now, as a team, the Phoenix Suns ended up shooting 30% from 3, 11 for 36. Meanwhile, the Lakers, they shot 14 for 32, which was a lot better than the Phoenix Suns at 43%. It's just their field goal percentage was really, really mediocre. It wasn't as good as it was in the previous games. They shot 41% from the field as a team, and a lot of that blame has to go on LeBron. And it should also be noted that the Lakers are completely flawless when Bronny is not on the team. When Bronny is on the team, and they lost their game the moment that Bronny got sent to the G League. So. But that's just speculation, obviously. You guys know better than that. But anyways, I mean, again, this is just a very unfortunate loss for LeBron. Something that I don't really expect to be happening later on in the future, but only time will tell, and we'll see. Because if LeBron is on the decline, if he's seriously on the decline, then the Lakers season might be in serious trouble. But again, I don't think that's going to happen. So we'll see. But that's all that I have for this third segment. Again, as I mentioned previously, I thought the Lakers were going to win in this matchup, so that's already one prediction that I got wrong. And we're going to go ahead and go into the fourth segment where I recap the rest of these games and I talk about the rest of the games and the rest of the teams that I ended up picking into winning this game. So I'll be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, I'm going to go ahead and recap all of these games that happened yesterday and my picks for these games and who I picked to end up winning in some of these games. So there is somebody in the chat, Markin Farrer, I don't know if I pronounced that name right, so I apologize. Has LeBron had a fake injury to avoid negative press for the NBA regarding his Diddy party attendance? To be honest, I don't know. And to be quite honest, I don't think LeBron, if he did attend, I don't think he knew anything about what Diddy was doing. And if he did find out, he has absolutely nothing involved with that man and absolutely nothing involved with the situation going on over there. And, I'm not talking about politics on this basketball podcast. This is basketball. It has absolutely nothing to do with politics, so just get out of here with that comment with that, all right? Nothing to do with basketball, has nothing to do with LeBron and his injury. It's not going to, and none of that, all right? I'm not even going to bother acknowledging that comment in the, in politics. Again, this is a basketball podcast. I'm not going to talk about that. Yeah, that is I will admit though that That is a very funny comment. Basketball, he says that basketball is 100% political. Sure, but that doesn't mean I gotta talk about that. That doesn't mean I gotta talk about that, does it? Because I'm talking about basketball. Like, I'm talking about the game of basketball. I'm not talking about the issue with Kyrie and that whole debacle over in 2020, 2021. That was just Kyrie being a quack. That has nothing to do with politics whatsoever. You could see him on the Mavericks. He's doing just fine on the Mavericks. There's absolutely nothing going on that no. We're not doing that. Jordan got in trouble for saying he yes, I do know that he got in trouble for doing that. But again, do I got to talk about that? No, I really don't. Because again, while that might have something to do with basketball, that is not the game of basketball. I do not have to talk about that, and I do not have to give my opinions on that whatsoever. And yes, sure, I get that. I totally understand what you're trying to say, but again, he is a quack. He was a quack that year. It didn't matter what was going on like outside of the things. You can make an argument, yes, the Brooklyn Nets, they shouldn't have benched him. They shouldn't have done this, but in the end of the day, there was a requirement for the team. And there's a requirement for the, it was already said that New York was going to do this, that, and the other with COVID-19. So as a player, you have the option to either take it and continue playing or not take it. Kyrie chose to not take it. And look, Kyrie at that time, he wasn't going to play. He barely wanted to play in any game. It was genuinely that simple. He barely wanted to play in any of the games. And like the way I see it, I think he took that his stance as a way to sort of just enable him from not playing these games. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because now that he's on Dallas, he's playing in every single game just fine. And it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with basketball. It really doesn't matter. It genuinely doesn't. So, like, just stop with that. Like, again, I'm not going to talk about politics on this podcast. It does not matter. You want to talk politics with somebody about this about basketball, go talk to your friends. Talk to somebody else. Don't talk to me about that. It's that simple. But aside from that, let's focus on basketball for once, and let's talk about these games that ended up going down yesterday. So the Cavs, they ended up playing the Knicks. As I alluded to before, this was a really bad day for New York and New York fans. I picked the Knicks to end up winning these games. I'm not even going to acknowledge the rest of your comments in the chat, to be honest with you. But if you're going to keep being trying to be political with me, I'm not going to acknowledge any of that stuff. But aside from that, the Knicks, they ended up playing the Cavs. They lost 104-110. They held a lead in the fourth quarter, and it was really like I thought that the Knicks were going to be able to prevail in this matchup, considering how in every single game that in every single series that they've played with the Cavs, they usually end up being the team that comes out on top. And the Knicks, they ended up losing 104-110. And hold on, finally you're talking about basketball. Bronny can't even compete in the G League. I have no idea, but we'll have to wait and we'll have to see. Because again, I do think that, the decision to get into the draft was a little bit early. I do think that, if he would have stayed in college for a little bit longer, his development as a player would have definitely improved. Like, I do agree with that. But again, only time will tell. And who knows, maybe he can compete in the G League. Only time will tell. From what I've seen, I don't think he can. I'm not entirely positive on his ability to compete in the G League, but again, only time will tell. And you also have to remember that this was his time in college. It was sort of, you could argue that it was even cut short because he had heart problems that sidelined him for a season in college. And aside from that, though, I still don't think that I think it was a little bit too early to draft Bronny. But again, we all knew that LeBron wanted to play with his son at least for one game. So, again, anything can happen. The way I see it, G League has coaches and trainers as well. Same thing with college. And you can make the argument that some of those trainers are a little bit better. again, you can make an argument for that. And so when you have these trainers constantly working with these professional athletes and focusing on these professional athletes and their career, I think anything is possible, and you can make any roster if you just work hard enough and you get the proper coaching and you get the proper training that you absolutely need. I just think that maybe he entered the league a little bit early before he could get that proper coaching. But in the G League, anything can happen, and any player can be exactly who they want to be in this league. I mean, we've seen several players come in from the G League who we didn't really expect them to be that good, and then they ultimately ended up making a starting spot on the roster and being solid enough to compete in the NBA. So again, anything can happen, and I don't want to sort of discredit Bronny. I know it sounds like I'm trying to defend him, but I'm not going to defend the fact that I don't think that he was ready for the NBA. But that's besides the point. Now, the Knicks, they ended up, like I said, they ended up losing. Darius Garland ended the game with 34 points for the Cavs. Jarrett Allen ended with 15 points and 15 rebounds. Donovan Mitchell ended with 25 points, 5 assists, and 2 rebounds for this matchup. The Cavs didn't really shoot that well from 3, but again, neither did the Knicks in this matchup. The Knicks went 9 for 28 from 3 with 32%. The Cavs went 12 for 36 with 33%. So it was a really close game, but this game sort of fell apart towards the end of the game. And mainly, I mean, Darius Garland scoring all of those points, it really did not help in the slightest. Now, it was really in the fourth quarter where the Knicks ended up blowing this game and ended up collapsing, at least in my opinion, because the game was close to around the 6, maybe even 7 minute mark, and then it just ended up being bad, and they ended up just blowing it. And I just, it's the Knicks. I should have expected that, but guy can't shoot and he's almost under 5 feet. No handles. I mean, look, we clearly see that he has handles, and we clearly can see that he struggles with shooting. But shooting in the league is so much more different than shooting in an NBA game is so much more different than shooting in everywhere else. So obviously that pressure is going to be under him. I don't really expect if the number 1 and the number 2 picks in this draft are playing just as bad, I don't expect a second-round pick to play any better. We can both agree on that, right? I mean, Zachary Resacher, in fact, while we're on that topic, we might as well go ahead and talk about them in both of these 2 games. The Wizards ended up playing the Hawks. I picked the Hawks to win this game, but unfortunately, they ended up losing 121 to 119 in this matchup. Now, the 2 rookies that I'm talking about, Alexander Sarr and Zachary Resacher, they've been abysmal in these games. I mean, Alexander Sarr ended with 7 points, 9 rebounds, 1 assist. He did record 2 blocks. However, his shooting in this game, he shot 3 for 11 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3. Then for Zachary Resacher, the number 1 pick in the draft, ended with 4 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, 2 blocks. But he ended up shooting 1 for 8 from the field. And how many minutes are they getting? Well, Zachary Resacher, he got 26 minutes in this matchup, and Alexander Sarr got 27 minutes in this matchup. So it's really they played really bad. Every guard in the league is better at handles than he is. Of course every guard in the league is going to be better at handles than he is, because every guard in the league has experience in the NBA. He doesn't. What? It doesn't. Of course they're going to have better handles. And the number 1 and the number 2 pick are playing almost as bad, if not just as bad. But of course, Bronny's going to get most of the spotlight, and Bronny's getting 0 minutes because he's not on the roster anymore. So again, they're playing just as bad, and they were picked higher than Bronny, and it's what gives? That just doesn't make any sense. That really does not make any sense. And I'm very shocked that none of these number 1 and number 2 picks are getting nearly as much attention for playing as bad as they really are. And Kyle Kuzma, he ended the game with 25 points, 11 rebounds. Jordan Poole ended with 26 points. The Atlanta Hawks side, Jalen Johnson ended with 29 points, 12 rebounds. Trae Young did not play that well in this game shooting the ball. He shot 2 for 15 from the field, 2 of 10 from 3, ended with 14 points. He did cap off 8 rebounds and 13 assists in this matchup as well. But again, this shooting percentage and this inefficiency is something that is, it's normal. It's something that we are accustomed to seeing with Trae Young. Larry Nance Jr. ended with 15 points, and Garrison Matthews ended with 14 points. And then finally, the last game that I ended up getting wrong in my predictions was the Bulls going up against the Grizzlies. The Bulls ended up winning 126-123. Zach LaVine ended the game with 30 points. Kobe White ended with 20. Nikola Vucevic ended with 22 points. And on the Memphis Grizzlies side, Desmond Bane ended with 30 points. Santi Aldama ended the game with 11 points, 13 rebounds. Jaren Jackson Jr. ended the game with 19 points. There was no Ja Morant in this matchup, which I was unaware of, but they still were able to make this a pretty close game up until the very end. Now, those were all the games that I ended up getting wrong, so let's talk about the games that I ended up getting right. The Jazz lost to the Dallas Mavericks. I totally expected the Dallas Mavericks to end up winning in this matchup. PJ Washington, 12 points, 11 rebounds. Kyrie Irving, 23 points. Klay Thompson ended with 18 points. And Luka Doncic ended with a near triple-double, 15 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists as well. He did not shoot the ball that efficiently either. 5 for 22, 1 of 9 from 3. But a win by a mile, win by an inch, a win is a win, and I totally expected that to happen. Next, the Orlando Magic ended up beating the Pacers. Orlando Magic. And Paolo Banchero ended the game with 50 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 blocks. Almost a 50-point triple-double. We almost had our first 50-point triple-double this season. He was just 1 assist off. Jalen Suggs ended the game with 25 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds. A lot of improvement coming in from Jalen Suggs this year so far. Wendell Carter Jr. ended the game with 11 points and 10 rebounds. Franz Wagner only played 11 minutes. I think he got hurt in this matchup. I didn't really watch this game. Now, for the Pacers matchup, Halliburton almost got a triple-double, 19 points, 10 assists, and 9 rebounds. Obviously, he heard me criticizing him and saying that Trae Young was better than him, and now all of a sudden Trae Young was playing bad, and then Halliburton was playing good. Of course, that's what happens. Pascal Siakam ended with 26 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 assists, but of course this matchup just wasn't enough against the Orlando Magic and Paolo Banchero. The Heat ended up beating the Pistons. Obviously, they were going to beat the Pistons. I mean, there was absolutely no questions about that. The Celtics, they ended up beating the Bucks. Yeah, there was really no question about that. The Bucks, they had a lead at one point, but then they ended up blowing it. Of course, Doc Rivers is their coach. Giannis ended the game with 30 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. Damian Lillard ended with 33 points, 7 assists, and 7 rebounds. But still, it wasn't enough for the Boston Celtics. And Tatum finally came back down to earth, didn't really play all that well in this matchup. 6 for 16 with 15 points, but that doesn't matter because Peyton Picard had 28 points, 10 for 14 from the field. And Jaylen Brown ended the game with 30 points, 10 for 19 from the field. Drew Holiday ended with 21 points, 7 for 12 from the field. And Derek White ended 5 for 13 from the field with 13 points. And you're probably right about that comment. I mean, who knows? But, I mean, you're here, so it really doesn't matter to me. Now, in the Nuggets versus Raptors game, the Nuggets ended up winning 127-125. It was a much closer game than what I thought was going to happen for the Nuggets. Jokic ended up scoring 40 points again, 10 rebounds and 4 assists, along with 2 blocks with that as well. Aaron Gordon ended with 16 points and 11 rebounds, along with 8 assists. And the rest of the starting lineup, they played very well. They all ended in double figures in this matchup. Jamal Murray ended the game with 17 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. Didn't really shoot the ball all that well, but then again, he wasn't going up against the Lakers, so that makes total sense. He only really shoots very well against the Lakers. I don't know what it is, but that's just what he does. And on the Raptors side, Scotty Barnes ended the game with 21 points, 12 rebounds, 9 assists, and 5 steals. I told you he would be a very, very good pick for fantasy. So if there's an option to trade for Scotty Barnes, I would highly recommend doing so. Jacob Poeltl ended the game with 16 points and 19 rebounds, a fantastic performance. RJ Barrett ended with 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists as well. Now, we're running short on time, so I can only go through, just a little bit. The Houston Rockets, I picked them to win, and they ended up not disappointing me this time. Jalen Green is performing out of his mind, 36 points. Fred VanVleet ended up scoring 11 on 9 assists. And Jabari Smith Jr. ended the game with 17 points. Now, Sengun, he's been a little bit underwhelming, at least on the offensive side of the ball. He shot 5 for 14 from the field, 12 points overall, but he did record 12 rebounds. And in this matchup, Victor Wembanyama, he did record 20 rebounds along with 14 points and 4 blocks. But I don't really know. Would I say he outplayed Sengun? I'm not entirely sure because they both played considerably poor. And he did shoot 6 for 14 from the field. And when you have Victor shooting like that from the field, it's very difficult to end up winning a game if you're the Spurs. And then finally, the last game, the Kings, they ended up beating the Portland Trailblazers 111-98. The DeRozan and De'Aaron Fox, they finally get their first win as teammates. DeRozan ended the game with 23 points. De'Aaron Fox ended the game with 24 points. And Sabonis ended the game with another double-double, 16 points and 13 rebounds, along with 7 assists. Now, for Portland's side, they did not really have a dominant player in this matchup. DeAndre Ayton ended the game with 20 points and 11 rebounds. And when DeAndre Ayton is your best player on the court, it spells bad news. It usually spells bad news for your team. So that's all that I have to say on this recap of the NBA games. So now I'm going to go ahead and go into the 5th segment where I talk about the next games that are coming up later tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and give a prediction on what teams I think are going to end up winning tonight. So I'll be right back after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned. And we are back with the 5th segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this 5th segment, I'm going to give off some of my predictions on who's going to win in tonight's game. Now, these are there are going to be a few, there's only going to be 4 games tonight, so I'm only going to give it's going to be a much shorter segment than usual. And I'll go ahead and I'll acknowledge some more people in the chat. Marcon Ferreira, he continues to talk about Bronny and talk down on Bronny James. Lakers wait until the worst players are on the court to send Bronny in. Bronny is playing against the second crew, and he, on the comment that I said about Zachary Rasacher and Alexander Czar playing bad, he says they're playing against A-list players. And it doesn't matter that they're playing against A-list players. That is why they got picked number 1 and number 2 in the draft. So they could play well against A-list players. And right now they aren't doing that. If this was any other draft class that didn't have Bronny James in it, they would get a lot of attention and they would most likely get way more criticism than Bronny does. So I think that the criticism towards Bronny is a little bit unfair given how the number 1 and the number 2 pick in the draft aren't necessarily playing up to their expectations. And that's really all that I have to say about that. And I mean, look, they're the number 1 and the number 2 pick in the draft. I don't know why you picked them number 1 and number 2 in the draft just to be mediocre. Not to mention Reed Sheppard, who I thought was going to be the favorite to win Rookie of the Year, is also not really playing all that well in this regular season. In fact, let me just go ahead and look at the box scores and what he ended up putting up in this game. Because honestly, I didn't even see him play all that much in this game. He only played 3 minutes in this matchup, and he ended up scoring 0 points. So, again, 3 minutes, so that is rather unfair. But in the last few games that he's played, and so far he's played in 4 of these games, let's go ahead and look at Reed Sheppard and his averages real quick. Because from the last time I saw his averages, he was only averaging 3 points. Now he's averaging 2.5 points, 0.8 rebounds, and 1 assist. Again, these are the top 3 picks in the NBA draft, and here they are playing really, really bad. So I don't think that of course, the criticism towards Bronny is incredibly unfair, because it's like these 3 top picks in the draft aren't even playing up to the best of their abilities, and or at least the ability that a lot of people expect from a top 1, top 2, or top 3 pick in the draft. That's just the way it is, and they're not getting any sort of scrutiny for that because Bronny is in this draft. So I think that criticism is rather unfair towards Bronny, but that's just me. So on to these games that ended up happening that are going to happen today. The televised games are going to be the Mavericks against the Timberwolves. That's going to be on TNT at 7:30. And the Pelicans matching up against the Warriors. That's also going to be on TNT at 10 after the Mavericks and the Timberwolves game conclude. The rest of the other 2 games, they're going to be on local channels. The Nuggets are playing against the Nets, and the Kings are going to play against the Jazz. The Kings play at 9 as opposed to playing at 10. So, excuse me. But in this matchup, I think the Nuggets are going to end up beating the Brooklyn Nets. I know that the Denver Nuggets are really struggling, and they only ended up winning 1 game. So did the Nets. They only ended up winning 1 game, and that 1 game was a big shocker against the Milwaukee Bucks. But really, anything is possible when Doc Rivers is your head coach for Milwaukee. But I think the Nuggets are going to end up prevailing in this matchup. Really, the Nets don't have anything to stop Jokic. They do have Claxton, but at the same time, I really don't think that Claxton is going to be enough to slow down the 3-time MVP Nikola Jokic. And so I think that I picked the Nuggets to win this matchup. And I will say I do think that Cam Thomas is going to end up dropping maybe like 30 points in this matchup, but still that's not going to be enough for the Denver Nuggets. Now, the Mavericks and the Timberwolves, that's probably going to be the trickiest game to pick like in this matchup, because I genuinely cannot decide on which team I think is going to end up prevailing. The Timberwolves, they do play at home, and I'm going to pick the Timberwolves in this matchup. They play at home. I feel like there's going to be a lot of bad blood between these 2 teams. I think Anthony Edwards is going to have a really good game in this matchup, and I don't know, I'm not really entirely sold on Klay Thompson and his efficiencies yet, not to mention Kyrie and his efficiencies as well. I do think that the Timberwolves can end up prevailing in this matchup, especially having the home court advantage. Now, the Warriors, they're going to match up against the Pelicans. Now, despite that the Pelicans don't have DeJounte Murray, they've still been a really formidable team. They did struggle against the Portland Trailblazers in the last matchup, but they did end up prevailing. And the Warriors, they ended up losing to the Clippers. So coming off of this loss to the Clippers, I don't think that the Warriors will be able to beat the Pelicans. I'm going to pick the Pelicans to win in this matchup against Golden State. And, I mean, Curry, he hasn't really been playing all that well, so he's definitely due for a good game, but I don't see it happening against the Pelicans. I genuinely just don't. It could happen, though, considering how they don't have DeJounte, who is a very formidable perimeter defender, but still, I don't see that really happening. I do expect Buddy Hield to go off in this matchup. Next, I think the Kings are going to beat the Jazz, despite the fact that the Jazz are playing at home. And the Jazz, they are one of the worst teams arguably the worst team in the entirety of the Western Conference right now. In fact, let's actually go ahead and look at the standings just to make sure. Yeah, so far the Jazz, they are the only team in the NBA, in the Western Conference that hasn't won a game. The other team in the NBA that hasn't won a game is, of course, the Detroit Pistons. I mean, who would have guessed it? And for some reason, the Wizards, they're pretty high in the seeding, despite the fact that they're 1-2. But then again, the Bucks are all the way down below in the seedings, being 1-3. So that really says a lot about Doc Rivers and his coaching. And I know I keep picking on Doc Rivers, but I can't help it because it's really, I am baffled that the Bucks ended up firing their head coach and ended up picking up Doc Rivers as their head coach. I think it was a really bad decision, and I don't expect Doc Rivers to keep having a job. And that's really unfortunate because after Doc Rivers, who's lined up next is most likely Darvin Ham, and that is also less than ideal for the Bucks. But those are my picks for tonight. I think the Nuggets are going to win, I think the Timberwolves are going to win, and I think the Pelicans are going to win, and I think the Kings are going to win. Let me know in the comments what you guys think and whether or not you guys think that these teams are going to end up prevailing in this matchup. But that's all that I have to say, and that's it for the show. So thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As usual, we love to hear what you guys have to say during the show, whether you guys have a hot take, whether you guys have a burning question, something that you've just been dying to share. We're all ears, and if you really want your comment and or question to get noticed, then I recommend using Super Chat. Just click on the $ below the chat box, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show, make it much more interactive between myself and you guys, and if Super Chat is not really your thing, then that's all right. You can always use the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment, gsmcpodcast.net, and you can send in your comments and or donations that way. They really help the show. They make it much more interactive between myself and you guys. And that's all that I really have to say about this for this podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't